Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. So we got a few things that we're going to dabble on here today. We're going to start off with the Epstein client list. Don't expect much. It seems like the FBI is trying to hide paperwork, but don't worry, have no fear. Kash Patel is going to save the day. Then we're going to move on to more lies of Mark Carney. This man couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it, but it makes sense. He's a banker. So that all kind of comes together. And then we're going to go on to what's happening with the Doge House Committee. I've had this thing playing for the last few days, and what is coming out, the evidence, the documents, the proof, plus the money trail is mind-blowing. And it's going to change the world as long as we can stop the legacy media from destroying it. So I need you to like, share, and subscribe and get the word out so that more people see the evidence and can take a couple steps back and reflect on what we got to do to change. So, without further ado, let's get started with the Epstein List.
Where it was a promise made by both President Donald Trump and FBI Director Kash Patel to release as much information as possible about Jeffrey Epstein and his circle of sex trafficking. With his apparent suicide in his jail cell in 2019, hope for answers about Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring faded. But Attorney General Pam Bondi insists her Department of Justice will release as much information as possible.
This will make you sick. 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information.
That stunning number of victims, one reason Senator Marsha Blackburn this week sent a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, asking him to make public the names of Epstein's associates that are listed in the flight logs of his private jet and in Ghislaine Maxwell's Little Black Book. Maxwell was a former British socialite found guilty of child sex trafficking, largely for her work assisting Jeffrey Epstein.
Every piece of information is like putting a puzzle together. You get one piece and that leads you to the next two or three.
So you think this is much bigger than Jeffrey Epstein?
Oh yes, absolutely. There was a global network. This is not about celebrity. This is about ending this practice of human trafficking and sex trafficking and ending this modern day slavery.
The Attorney General releasing binders marked unclassified to conservative commentators. Later, though, in a letter accusing the FBI of withholding documents, directing Kash Patel to release them by Friday morning. Photos from Jeffrey Epstein's past show him associating with everyone from Prince Andrew to former President Clinton to current President Donald Trump. Here on Capitol Hill, we are hearing this is just phase one. To expect much more. Lawmakers have already asked for surveillance video from Jeffrey Epstein's properties as well. In Washington.
So the best part about this whole Epstein timing works out really good with following into Mark Carney because he has ties to Epstein. His wife and Maxwell's sister are besties, BFFs, something like that. Best buddies. And there are more and more pictures coming out showing Carney very casually enjoying Epstein's company and them at many socials together because that is the billionaires club and most of them know each other very well, which scares the bejesus out of me. Let me know how you feel in the comments. So we're going to move on. I'm just going to do a mild recap of a video I did yesterday just to kind of start us off on the lies and how they are starting to really domino. Now, normally you can kind of pick out one lie on certain times when you see them, but this leaders' debate really brought out the true Mark Carney. So let's just revamp this one.
You were the vice chairman at Brookfield Asset Management prior to
the chair. I was the chair.
Sorry. In the fall, they moved their head office from Toronto to New York. Did you approve of that decision, and what does this say about your commitment to growing Canada's economy and betting on Canada as of now?
Okay. So two things. I'll just correct a few factual things. One, I was chair of Brookfield Asset Management. I ceased to be chair on the 15th, I think, of January. The formal decision of
So they're showing paperwork published November 1st, 2024.
the board happened
Brookfield
after
confirms
I
plans to
ceased
move its head
to
office
be
to New
on the
York.
board.
December 1st, 2024, Mark Carney writes a letter communicating the unanimous decision made by Carney and the board he chaired to move the headquarters from Canada to the US. And then it's showing the documents. Unanimously determined.
The formal decision of the board happened after
Yours truly,
I ceased
Mark
to
Carney.
be on the board.
Now, the best part about this is that I get to follow it up and show you what level the Liberals put ethics at.
Can you just come clean on the Brookfield move, though?
What I would say is, irrespective of this particular instance, anyone who knows anything about business knows that boards actually have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. I wasn't in the room. I don't know what the conversations were, but I know Mr. Carney is a man of very high ethics. At the end of the day, his job as a chairman of a board is to act in the best interests of shareholders. I'm sure he did that, but in terms of the specifics, you've got to ask Mr. Carney.
So if he calibers him as being a man of high ethics, it explains a lot about the Liberal Party today. They've broken every ethics rule possible. You can't count on your fingers and toes how many of them have been found being corrupt, lying, deceiving, and the rest of all that jazz, what we would actually call anti-Canadian. I'm sure a lot of other countries would put their country in that same sentence. It's just the wrong thing to do. But then watching, you end up seeing this.
Mr. Carney, the last in the 1 minute.
Okay. Well, it was my privilege to work with Paul Martin when he balanced the books and kept the books balanced. And one of the lessons of that is the need for government to continue to focus on how effectively it is spending precious taxpayers' dollars.
This is the man who drove the UK into the inflationary crisis they're in. The PM that was in while he was there for a short time has done interviews about how he destroyed that country's fiscal power. Now, he says he worked with Paul Martin. This is Paul Martin. This is his spreadsheet. This is who he is. Wikipedia. I checked it all out. They're bang on the money. So it's very easy for us to just kind of go over and look at dates. So let's just take a look. Martin ran for leader of the Liberal Party in, where am I here? In 1990, blah, 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 blah. He ended up becoming the Minister of Finance after the Liberal victory in 1993. Martin oversaw many changes in the financial structure of the Canadian government, and his policies had a direct effect on eliminating the country's chronic fiscal deficit by drastically cutting spending and reforming various programs, including social services. In 2002, Martin resigned as finance minister. Now let's move on to Mr. Carneys. And again, I had to do a bunch of research because you can't trust everything on anything that starts with wiki. And these are bang on. And it says that in 1988, he took off, went to school, got a bachelor's degree in economics. He took a postgraduate study at the University of Oxford, at St. Peter's College and Nuffield College, where he received his master's and doctoral degrees in the same field in 93 and 95, respectively. During his Harvard years, He was a backup goalie, blah, 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 blah. Moving on, Carney spent 13 years at Goldman Sachs. He was in school when it all started, and then he's in Goldman Sachs throughout Paul's tenure. Another blatant lie. And more people are coming out, although they're trying not to state anything because they're trying to protect the Liberal name. And they're saying he wasn't there. Now, we're going to dabble into some footage from DC Media. And speaking of which, the cars that came that were at Rideau that I broke the news on there, actually, Daisy broke the news. I just saw him post it right away, and I know that he's always on the ball. So I posted it. We were hoping it would have been something bigger, but it's not. It seems as though there are more and more people migrating to Ottawa and protesting this Liberal government, especially Trudeau and all of these Liberals that are running for the leadership, because the mainstream media is lying through their teeth. They are hiding all of the lies. They are pushing this hate towards Trump instead of talking about the actual issues facing Canadians. Trump didn't create the tent city epidemic we have. Trump didn't create the fentanyl and drug problem that is just destroying our country. He never created the drop in GDP. He never created the inflationary crisis. He had nothing to do with the heartache and troubles we are having today. That is all caused by the same people who are trying to convince you that if you put a new leader in, it's going to be much better, sunny ways. Putting lipstick on a pig is still a pig. Now, if you're watching this and you have youths in the room, you may want them to leave. It's embarrassing for me to have to say this because I'm going to show you a clip of a sitting MP. Mind you, this guy he has serious, and I've said this before, he needs help. We need to set up a better system linked to our healthcare to help these people. They need help. They need to have somebody they can talk to that can help get their marbles straight. This is the main problem with a lot of the crime, a lot of the drugs, a lot of the homelessness. We have mental illness problem in this country. We need to get on it. And this guy needs to enter into the program. So I apologize for the profanity, but you need to see this. You need to understand who this guy is. Kick the kids out. Trust me, you're not going to believe the potty mouth this guy has.
Just Mr. Angus. How you doing today?
Good, man. How you doing?
We got some questions.
We certainly do.
To see you here. We're hoping to see some progress.
A little bit of a photo op here.
And we're hoping that we're going to see some peace forthwith.
Absolutely. As soon as Putin is put in jail as an international war criminal, we'll get all the peace you want.
We're not going to have peace until then?
What, you support war criminals? Go ahead.
I want the war to stop.
Criminals. Yeah, go on. Fuck off, Putin troll.
Dude,
Putin troll.
Nothing to do with Putin.
Yes, you do. If you don't stand with Ukraine, then you're a fascist.
Okay,
so don't waste
do you
my
think
time
it's
talking
do you
to
think
you.
it's
right to the camera again.
Do you think it's fascistic to threaten to take away Canadian citizenship because you don't agree with their political leaning?
Yeah, no, you got.
Do you think that's appropriate?
Yeah. The convoy troll.
What about political violence, sir? You're a well-known supporter of Antifa. I have been the victim of
Yeah,
this.
you know Antifa?
Yes.
My uncles fought fascists all over Europe. They'd fight your fascists.
So you support the violent Antifa mobs in Ottawa? I have been the victim of violence from them. I was jumped.
Because you're a moron.
Because I'm a moron. So you're saying I deserve the violence from
No,
Antifa?
I think you're a
I was
Putin
jumped,
troll.
robbed, and beaten.
Ooh, you're a Putin troll.
I was jumped, robbed, and
Fuck
beaten in a
off,
park.
Putin troll.
Now, Daisy and this other guy, they were actually there just trying to ask him some questions. and he just totally came off. Totally unglued. This is what socialists do, because they can't discuss things with somebody who has an honest question. They can't answer the question because they don't have an answer. All they have is this theory, this Marxist theory. They went there to ask questions that he can't answer. People like him, the liberals, the rest of the NDP, especially Jagmeet, especially Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, they only talk to media and will only allow media in their conferences and releases that are part of their establishment. CBC, CTV, Global, the rest of them. They're in the establishment. And I'm sure you've seen how I blew the lid off of what was going on with these ad scams and how there's more media from the outside, like the Monk Association, who are doing this as well. You cannot trust anybody on these media outlets. They throw softball questions, or these guys already know what the question's going to be. These guys are trying to get some questions answered. That's all they were there for.
Fuck off,
Do you think
Putin
that's
troll.
appropriate
Fuck
comment?
off, Putin troll. Yeah, you stand outside the Russian embassy and
I
repeat
came here
Putin's talking
specifically to
points.
see you.
Fuck off,
I came
Putin
here
troll.
for you. You and your party, actually, Peter Julian called me an extremist in the House of Commons.
Yeah,
He
you
said
are.
my watermark is extremist without
You are an
evidence.
extremist.
How so? Can you provide any evidence
Yeah,
to
you're
that, sir?
standing outside here supporting Putin, you fucking
I came
troll.
here to confront you on your terrible policy. I want to know why you think it's appropriate to strip citizens of citizenship.
The money that we gave Ukraine, are there going to be assurances that we're going to get our money back too, or is that a grant? Was that a grant? I
Get a
retired
job.
when I was young. I made my money before I was 30. I don't need a job, okay? My job is dealing with you.
Yeah, you're a
My job
you're a
is dealing with you.
fascist. You're
You're
a
gonna get our money
fascist.
back?
You're a fascist.
So you're answering.
Are you seeing the media around him? They're spending. I don't know where the NDP's getting their money from, because as far as I know, looking online, their coffers are almost empty. And from what I've heard, they spent like almost $500,000 on an ad for Jagmeet Singh to come out looking like he's some type of a boxer or a fighter. It's pathetic. It's all propaganda. And that's what these guys are. If you saw, he was there. He wasn't there to protest. He was there for a photo op, because it seems to him that this is the best side to be pictured on. Look at me. Look at me. I'm standing up to Putin. Look at me, because that is what mainstream is pumping out. As opposed to, wait a minute, why are we still giving money? Why is anybody even out there picketing when we have somebody who's over there trying to get peace? And all you're talking about is war? People are sick of the bloodshed. They are sick of the wars, the tyranny, the terrorism, the innocents being hurt and dying. We're sick of it. These guys feed off it. This is their nourishment. And you can see by his reaction, is this the guy you want representing you?
No, we're not getting our money back. Let me ask you this. Do you support Ukraine going into NATO? What about NATO?
I support Ukraine.
You think they
I
should be in
support
NATO?
Ukraine.
I want to hear you say you think they should be in NATO.
Who supports Putin fascist? You're a Putin fascist.
Wow. Unbelievable. I apologize for that. I hope YouTube doesn't slap me silly and censor the video because of it. But I mean, that is a sitting MP amongst a whole bunch of people out in public. I don't know if there were any kids there, but if there were, wow. Wow. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. That man has no dignity. Now, this is that House committee that I was telling you about. It's big. Listen carefully.
Mr. Roman, are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
Yes, sir.
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Khamsi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataib al-Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance from U.S. foreign aid.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the mechanisms in place that are to stop foreign aid from going to terrorist groups, and why are they not working if we have any in place?
Sure.
And I would note that these are, you notice these are terrorist weaponry. You see some AKs, SKSs, some snipers, some clips, some clip carriers probably made in China, and I believe these are small landmines here beside right there.
Let's use Gaza as our case study. $2.1 billion in American taxpayers' money to Gaza since October 7th when Hamas invaded southern Israel. USAID money was going in terms of an emergency use authorization to try to go to parties that USAID formerly had a relationship with in the Gaza Strip. They had to have been vetted by OFAC. They should have been vetted against the special designated terror list from the State Department and from other Treasury organizations. Waivers were granted because they said that there was an emergency use to have that money come in to Gaza, thereby jettisoning the usual typical screening procedures. As a result, 90% of aid that was going from the United States by way of its agents in Gaza ended up in Hamas-controlled areas. And this is ridiculous. Essentially, what the U.S. assistance to Gaza did was underwrite the ability for Hamas to survive until the ceasefire was just passed a few weeks ago. There was no strategic thought for it, and there was no screening.
Seems like the emergency might have.
So we know that, and I've known this for a long time. Before Trudeau even got elected, a lot of us were screaming because we know where Trudeau was going with this. There was money going from the UN right into these terrorists' hands, and none of the media would touch it. They wouldn't talk about it. Nobody would say anything. And then the Liberals take power and they increase funding. And then guess what? A year ago, the bombshell comes out. Actually, it was more than a year ago. Pretty much a week after the horrific day this whole thing started, it came out that the UN was involved. All of their aid programs were aiding and abetting Hamas. Now, I've told this story on another episode. I will do an episode on what's happened in Palestine. I had a couple guys that I ended up working with. Both of them were from Palestine. We ended up with a very good friendship to the point where they told me a lot of things that most people would never have been privy to. And what they told me rocked me, shook me. I hurt now thinking about what they did to them as children to try and get them to hate Jews. These people are evil. Those two went back to try and get their family to safety, and they have never been seen again. We funded them. We keep allowing them to exist. And I'm going to use their words. These people must be eradicated from the face of the earth, not just for the Jews, not just for the Christians, but to help save the Muslims, because they're tarnishing the name of Allah. I have a lot of Muslim friends. They are just like every other person. They want to do well. They want peace. They just want to live their life. And these guys are making it seem like the Muslim is the enemy. It's not the Muslim that's the enemy. First, it's the government that is the enemy. Second, it's the evil the government funds to keep the war machine going, and to keep lining the pockets of politicians and third parties from our taxes to the war machine, to the meat grinder. Listen carefully. This is just getting started.
Might have been armed terrorists to kill civilians. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate, and even more than that, Samantha Powers, the administrator for USAID, was intent on having Israel not be able to defend itself.
to not be able to defend it.
Correct.
Mr. Primorak, is that correct? How do you say that? Primorak? I got Burchett, man. Nobody gets mine right, so don't worry about it. What is it, Primorak?
Perfect.
All right, thanks, brother. How did terrorists exploit our foreign aid loopholes?
Well, we have a lot of our
Can
international.
you pull your mic up? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You have international NGOs and UN agencies actively lobby here in Washington, D.C. against vetting policies that would prevent it. I was the senior vetting officer at USAID, and what
Hold
we
on a second. Did you say United Nations is doing this? The UN?
Sure, everybody who's getting money lobbies here.
That they're lobbying against us. I'm sorry, Mr. Roman, you're...
There's actually someone who used to work for one of those lobbies, the largest NGO lobby, Interaction. One of our co-witnesses here worked for them from 2018 to 2023. USAID effectively self-funds its own external private lobby that then goes back to Congress and asks for more money for USAID.
So the taxpayers fund this lobbyist who's working against American interests.
Correct.
Possibly killing our allies and possibly Americans.
They bring together groups in Washington that overseas work with groups that kill Americans.
Yeah, I don't need a flow chart to show that. I appreciate it. Do you think USAID programs have been aligned with the national security interests of the U.S.?
No, they have not. They have actually helped China.
Mr. Roman?
No.
Okay. How do these programs compromise our national security, Mr. Primorak?
They actually push China. They actually push much of the world towards China on the green energy agenda. They push people, ordinary people, billions of people towards China because of the resentment caused by our social reengineering.
Are we being lobbied by these pro-communist China groups currently?
Well, a lot of these countries don't even have to lobby because they get the money anyway, like South Africa.
Yeah, and in fact, these lobbyists have come to the House and have tried to kill legislation like H.R. 160, which was meant to increase transparency in USAID's funding of overseas organizations.
Is that a current piece of legislation?
That's from the last session.
And give me that number again.
H.R. 160.
And what does it do?
It was meant to give U.S. lawmakers the ability to have higher transparency in terror financing investigations aimed at scrutinizing extremist groups.
Mr. Primorak?
We had a regulation before we left in the last administration that anybody who touches money in countries where there's terrorists, those names have to go through databases, terrorist databases. That was overturned by Biden.
Overturned by Biden. Chair Lady, I am currently 5 seconds.
Now, this has been going on for days and days and days. And I keep playing it every time I am in between videos or just doing paper research. I've been listening to this. I picked this clip just because the finality of it was beautiful. It had an entirety to it where throughout the clip, it would open up your mind to just how bad these NGOs and US aid, as well as what we have up here, are. They're corrupt to the bone. We need transparency. We got to get it. Now, I got one last clip I want to finish off on, and I want you just to listen to the words. This is right out of the WEF Handbook, the Global Cabal. This is what they perceive the world to be. Let's hear it.
We really need to act with the fierce urgency of now. We need to recognize President Trump has said dozens of times he wants us to be the 51st state. I don't think any of us wants to be the leader who was asleep at the wheel and didn't get Canada defended.
Coming from her, that's hilarious. Decimated our military, decimated our dollar, decimated our country. Like everything they touched turned to crap. But listen carefully to what she says, and then Mark Carney follows up on it.
Did not work with our Democratic allies to protect our borders. They want to work with us. It's time for us to step up at home, to urgently reach out to them and build a new world order where democracy and Canadian sovereignty is protected.
A new world order.
Carney, you're up next.
I'm going to associate myself. I'm going to agree with that. The only amendment I'm going to make is, unfortunately, it won't be a world order. It will be a subset of the world order because the number of like-minded countries is much smaller with the U.S. exiting. But I want to make an important point.
And there you go. These people have got serious issues. They don't care. They don't care about real people. They only care about themselves and the masters they serve to better their pocketbooks and financial station. That's all they care about. We have to decimate this party. We need everybody to get out and vote. We are a standing army if we vote together. Let's get rid of this cabal. Let's force this party to clean itself up so they can come back like they were 30 years ago. A true opposition party. Yes, there will be flaws. Every party has them. But we've never seen the corruption that we have in the last decade. I hope you all enjoyed my show. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Chagai.